Welcome, everybody, to Survive and Advance on the Gruely True Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you, of course, as always, by Replenishing Care Technologies, the future of sports medicine. To find out more about Replenishing Care and all the products they offer, go to the gruelytruth.net page. Click on the banner at the top of that page, and it'll take you right there. I'm your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I want to welcome in my other co-host, a member of the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame, and a member of the 1981 national champion Indiana Hoosiers, where he combined for 26 points with Isaiah Thomas in the 1981 national championship win over North Carolina. Please help me welcome to the show, Steve Risley.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing today? You feeling pretty smug and glum over the big win by the Bengals last night? Going 2-0 for the first time in who knows how long?
Okay, whatever. It was a few years ago. But
okay,
well, I just feel better that your team hasn't won a game yet because I hate the Colts. And the Steelers haven't won a game yet, so that's good. And no, as a Bengals fan, I firmly expect everything to fall in at some point anyway, so we'll see what happens. We have a special guest today, and today our topic is going to be Gennady Golovkin, Saul Canelo Alvarez, and their rematch coming up tomorrow night on pay-per-view. We will also talk a little bit about the Bengals-Ravens game from last night after that. But first up, we have a boxing expert. He is the lead writer at Max Boxing. Also wrote Intimate Warfare, which, of course, is a tale of Gotti Ward and their epic trilogy, co-written with him by Dennis Taylor, pictures by Ed Mulholland. We never want to forget that because Ed does a great job there. But help me welcome to the show, John Raspanti. How you doing, John?
Doing good, Mike. How you doing? How you doing there, Steve?
Oh, we're
doing great, John. Enjoyed the fight. Just got to watch the fight, and that was straight out of a Rocky movie. I tell you what, I didn't think it was ever possible for that type of a fight to really go on. And if anybody's never seen this fight, you gotta YouTube. You gotta watch this fight because I was sweating after the 45 minutes it took me to watch that film.
Of course, Steve is not a boxing fan. He's more of a NASCAR,
I'm not,
basketball, kind of a girly girl kind of man. And we had him watch Gotti Ward, and he just watched it. And we've got John, who wrote the definitive book with Dennis on the fight. So just go ahead. And from a layman's terms, I mean, the thing that got me was when I asked you about it, you said it was like watching a Rocky movie.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing to me of watching the fight, the thing that was interesting was the slowest part of the fight were the first 2 or 3 rounds. Really, to me, it's like, okay, I've got all this hype on this boxing match coming out, and these guys are really like trying to feel each other out. They're kind of just punching, trying to get, finding out where the weaknesses is. One's a body blower, one's a brawler kind of. And interesting to me is that it started off slower and then progressed into just an all-out brawl toward the end where barely neither one of them could stand up. But, it was really interesting because they went through bouts of really good technical boxing, what as a novice would say, in the way that the Lampley and his crew were describing it, Larry Merchant and those guys were describing it. It sounded like, really good technical boxing going on. Then all of a sudden they both would just kind of get tired or get back through the rope, or one would try and use their dominant strength, and they would come in and then they would just start brawling for a while. But then the referee would separate and they'd calm back down and they'd go back into technical boxing. I thought it was a great transition from different style to different style to different style. That's kind of what made it fun and kept you in the match for the entire 10 rounds. But the slowest part of the fight, where you think would be the freshest, was the first 3 rounds of the fight.
Yeah, and John, you want to tell us a little bit about how you came up with the idea for the book, kind of just a quick overview of the process to write the book?
Sure. I was actually on my way to work a few years ago and came up, and I was thinking about great rivalries and more modern. Not the first idea was Graziano and Zale. I was thinking about that, but then I thought, well, let's think more modern. And I thought, you know what? Nobody's written anything about Gotti and Ward, and I actually just pulled off the side of the road and called Dennis, and I said, this is we need to do this. Nobody's done it, and he said, yes, let's do it. And that's basically how it started. It was simple as that. But, listening to Steve, it was very interesting because I had seen the fights live, of course. The first one is always going to be on my mind because it was so incredible. Steve's right on the money. Watching it again, to write the book, slowing everything down, stopping it, pausing it. That really gives you a real feel for. It's almost like, with Mike maybe watching football films, or maybe if you watch basketball and you slow everything down and you see things you missed the first time, little tiny things that you missed, and it really makes what happens later with the ultimate guts that these guys showed. I mean, so you talk about balls to the wall. I mean, that's really what it was. And then the respect. So it goes from that. It's like an arc of, like you said, Steve, the feeling out process. And then it was almost like when anybody hit somebody hard, the other one would always have to fire back and go, no, okay, you're going to get serious now. I'm going to come back at you. And just doing that, though, watching it again, just gave me the utmost respect for these two men. And that's why writing the book with Dennis and doing that was just a flat-out joy for me.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out to me is, like I said, Steve knew nothing about this fight. And when we're talking about it, he said, and the thing that impressed me the most was the way they reacted to each other after the fight. And Steve didn't know the whole backstory of, they become best friends, and Ward trains Gotti at the end of his career. And I think that that's what makes this more than a story about just 3 boxing matches.
Oh, absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
As a layman, it made me feel like it was a boxing match, not a street fight. I mean, these guys didn't seem to have any hate toward each other. They just realized they had probably just participated in one of the greatest boxing matches ever to be televised or put in front of an audience. And I think they both realized that. And you walked away when they were hugging each other feeling like they both were very proud to have been a participant in this. And it didn't really matter that much who won or lost. They knew that they had both won at that point in time. They both were standing at the end of the fight. And that's a victory in itself, just for like a novice like me watching a fight like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And Mike, let me say, they also, what was so awesome about it in a sense was that they both realized that they were fighting, they were like twins of each other in a sense, as far as guts, determination, and all that. And that's what Ward said, it's like fighting myself. Gotti said the same thing. I had never faced anybody that would keep coming back like that, just like he did. So it almost makes sense that after their wars, they eventually became good friends. And Dennis wrote about that so well, how that happened. And they were the best of friends. I mean, they were tight. And if you go through something like that, it's not anything any of us, have never boxed, have done. But you can imagine when you're involved with another person like that, it's such a give and take war. You have so much respect. It makes sense that after it's all done, this is a best friend to you. This is a great friend. This is somebody you can trust. So that's the thing. I called them blood brothers throughout the book, and that's what they became after these fights. They were the ultimate blood brothers.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing that makes boxing such a great sport is the fact that you look at those guys. Or guys like Holmes and Cooney. I mean, you had Jerry Cooney on the Ringside Boxing Show last Sunday, and I've interviewed Holmes and Cooney, and they both will spend as much time as you let them talking about how great a guy the other person is.
Yeah.
It's another great example of that, Mike, and that's exactly right.
My observation would just be this: would be during the fight, what they earned from each other was respect. That they earned each other's ultimate respect for the way they each fought, and then that blossomed over the years into an enduring, binding, lasting friendship. Would be my guess. It's the same thing like on the basketball court when we would always play Purdue. There was always that manufactured hatred toward Purdue and IU and their basketball rivalry. And every big major college sports rivalry has that. But to us as players, we respected all the guys at Purdue, and we hung out with them all summer long, and we were always great friends with the players of the Purdue squad, and we played summer ball with them all summer long. There was a respect there, and I think from what I saw throughout the course of that 10 rounds, those two just absolutely undeniably earned each other's respect, and that's probably what led to their lasting friendship for the next 2 fights and on down to the rest of their lives.
Yeah, and I'll tell you this, John, the book was outstanding, and I know I've been plugging it for the last year, and I know it's done great. Sales have been great. You want to tell people how they can get the book?
Oh, absolutely. The best way to go on is to go onto the Amazon website and then just type in the little box there, Intimate Warfare, and you will see it, mostly because, as you mentioned a few minutes ago, Mike, that incredible photo taken by Ed Mulholland that we put on the cover, and them going at it, Gotti and Ward. Gotti on the right, Ward on the left, and it's the true story of the Arturo Gotti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy, and it's black. You can't miss it. And it's Dennis Taylor and myself, and it's right there to order. It's very easy to do it. So, yeah, I would love it if some people would, people like Steve, who might not know as much about it. We wrote it for everyone. We didn't just write it for the boxing guys like you and me, Mike. We wrote it for people like Steve that only know maybe peripherally about these guys, and then you find out a hell of a lot more, how this came to be. The first fight wasn't even considered that much of a challenge for Gotti. Most people figured it would be an easy fight for him, and there are a lot of surprises in the story, and that's what we tried to focus on, to maybe surprise, entertain, and then when we did the fights, when I was writing about the fights, get you in there, get you in the ring, let you almost, even though you're not, get you as close as you can be to the fighters as you're reading it. And writing about that fight, the first fight, second fight, third fight, especially the first fight, was thrilling. So I hope that when people read it, they also feel that thrill of what it's like to be exchanging punches with somebody like Mickey Ward or Gotti. You're not getting hit, but you're there. You feel like you're right there watching it. You're inches away, and that was the goal there.
Yeah, so go to Amazon, Intimate Warfare, The Tale of Gotti Ward. John Dennis Taylor, as he said, Ed Mulholland, which, if you're a boxing fan, you know about the work Ed Mulholland's done for years. Outstanding photographer. So, this is the question. We're going to transition this to Canelo Alvarez versus Gennady Golovkin, basically for the Ring Magazine lineal middleweight champion of the world. There's a large backstory on this one. It's been some time, it's been over a year since the two first found themselves in the ring last September. Most felt Golovkin deserved to win, but judges ruled the fight a controversial split draw. A rematch, of course, was planned for Cinco de Mayo, but when Canelo failed a drug test twice because of clenbuterol in his system, he was given a 6-month suspension, and the date was scrapped. He's now back. In the years since the first fight, these two have developed a real rivalry, John, and with some heated words between the camps, adding a new dynamic to the rematch. Do you think that the hatred is real here?
I don't know if the word hatred comes into it. Some of Canelo's reactions seem pretty ridiculous to me because I'm like, bro, you're the one who got busted here. So I have more of a black and white way of looking at it. I've kind of softened a little bit because I watched him talk about it, and I thought, well, maybe it's possible that it happened. But even if it was a mistake on their part, it was sure a stupid mistake. And that is like, oh, God, okay, we're all human and all that kind of stuff. But I don't think Golovkin hates Canelo. No, I think Golovkin is a sportsman. That's the thing. He's a guy with 400 amateur fights. You can see when he fights. He fights like a sportsman. He doesn't try to embarrass anybody. He doesn't talk a lot. He's just a boxer. That's how he sees himself. In America, we kind of like sometimes guys that are a little bit over the top. That's not Golovkin. Canelo, I think he just feels disrespected, what we were just talking about. And if he's telling the truth, which, of course, as I said, seems slim, but if he is, you could probably understand if you're telling the truth, Mike, and Steve, and it's the truth, and it's stupid. And these guys are like, we don't believe you. You'd have to be an idiot to believe you. That could get a little frustrating. But I think if he took a different tack, it might help. If he was a little more humble about it, if he said, look, I know what I did was stupid, but it's truth. But instead he's all mad because they dare to question him. So that part is a little troubling to me, but I guess, you don't want to show too much of yourself. I don't know. But no, I think the minute they get in the ring, some of that will dissipate. As we know, you can't fight angry. You can certainly fight determined, and that's certainly what I'm expecting. But who knows? Maybe if somebody gets somebody hurt, there might be a little desire to be like, all right, bud. You remember what you said to me about 2 weeks ago? I'm going to really nail you with this one. So there might be a little bit more human element to this But that's what makes the fight intriguing and compelling because, and I'm sure that the promoter said, that's okay. Keep talking it up. That's fine. So it's got that edge to it, and that always makes it more interesting when you feel like there's a definite edge thing going on between the two guys.
Yeah, and when you look at these two guys, their styles I don't think can really change. The only thing that I could see could be different would be if Canelo or if Triple G was a little bit more aggressive, tried to get in and go to the body. But he seemed, at least early in the fight, the first half of the first fight, that he was unwilling to do that. Do you think that changes here?
Well, I think he knows that was a mistake. So I do. The thing is he's such a slow starter. Then in the first round, I don't think he's going to do much in the first round. I think he's going to do what he did the last time, probably feel out Canelo, kind of follow him around a little bit, not do anything. It's going to be a gradual thing. But Abel Sanchez has been talking about trying to get him to start faster. And if you saw his last fight against Martirosyan, I can't pronounce his name, but
Martirosyan?
Martirosyan, right. He started slow in that one, too. He got hit with a few punches. He even probably lost the first round. And then he comes out in the second round on fire. So it's just maybe it's age. I don't remember him starting slower like this 3 or 4 years ago. I hate to be the cliche thing about age, but maybe it's what takes him a round or two to get his motor going. But I think the goal is to start faster. Will he? I doubt it, actually. I think the first round, like I said, will be a little more of a feeling out round. If anybody comes out faster, it might be Canelo. Try to catch him off balance or something. They used to say years ago, the way you got rid of Joe Frazier, if you were lucky enough, was to get him early because he'd get knocked down early. Oscar Bonavena knocked him down twice in the first round in their first fight, and he almost won the fight right there. And sometimes guys like that, it takes them a while to get going, like I said. So I expect it to be pretty similar, Mike. You're right. The styles are the same. Canelo, for all his talk, he's going to be moving. That's what he does. He's a boxer puncher, or he's a puncher boxer, and that's fine. I mean, he's quick. He's young. Use your skills. Use what got you there. That's good. But I don't think there's really any hatred. I think it's more of the determination and the motivation to prove the other guy wrong. And again, that's what might raise the level of the fight, because you guys know, you played sports, I played sports. When you're motivated, you're determined, you're intense, you're focused. And that can really bring the fight, or whatever the sport is, up a level, because you're so, and so is the other guy. So again, that's what makes it so interesting.
Steve, when was the last time you were motivated and highly intense? Do you get that way on the golf course still? Did Steve check out on us?
Did he fall asleep, or?
Steve?
No, yeah, I'm here. Hang on, I have my mute button on because my dogs were chasing the pool guy. So I was chasing you guys the pool guy. So I have my mute button on. I apologize.
But what I'm saying is this: as you get older, do you lose the ability to be motivated and have that intensity? And I know golf is a lot different than boxing, but golf is what you do now. So when you look at that, do you see that it's harder to be that way?
Well, here's the question I had for you, and no, because I still get as intense or as motivated on the golf course. Now, it's a different thing. In a golf course, you pretty well manufacture your own mistakes. It's a singular sport, unlike boxing, where an opponent can lure you into making mistakes and draw you out. Now, the way you were describing it, John, is that the guy's coming in, and is going to be a revenge factor here because one feels he's been dissed or one feels he's been. I almost think that works as a disadvantage to you in a sport like boxing, because it makes you vulnerable, because you aren't thinking technical, you're thinking more revenge, and you're going to leave yourself open. You're going to leave a part of your body open that it's not covering, because you're going to try and go for the kill as opposed to going to technical play. So when I heard you describing that, I'm thinking, well, I don't know that I'd want to go into a fight this big where my mentality was to get revenge on this guy because of the way he dissed me or treated me throughout the process of leading up to this fight. I would want to be more methodical and take things, with a game plan, especially in a sport like boxing where you can be leading the whole fight in one good swing, one good connect, and you're gone. and the whole process changes in one punch. So, but no, in any sport, there's that level of intensity that you rise to when a golf course is kind of beating you up a little bit, or your swing's not doing what you want it to do. You get intense and you start trying to press too hard. And when you start pressing too hard, is generally when you make your mistakes. Maybe that's the point I was trying to make about going into it with some revenge factor on your mind in a fight that's coming up tomorrow night. I would tend to want to stay back, keep my wits about me, and have my fight plan, talking to my manager and trainer in the corner, sticking to my plan, and luring my opponent into making the mistakes rather than let me make him for him and make the match easier for him.
Yeah, and I think
ahead,
when you come down to it, in a big event like this, whether it's a championship fight that has this high a profile or a Super Bowl, I think a lot of times the winner, John, is more of the person that can control their emotions and keep them in check than anything else. And I think you brought up something when we talked the other day. You said that, and we both agreed last year before the fight when we saw it, that Triple G looked really tense, uptight. And you made the comment the other day that he doesn't look that way now.
Right. And what I meant earlier was, no, you never can fight angry because that's how you make mistakes. My point is both guys are highly motivated and intense. When you fight angry, when you play golf angry, any sport, I think most of the time, if you're angry, you're going to make a mistake. But, yeah, that's a good point, Mike. When I was watching the press conference, Golovkin looked totally at peace, totally at ease. And last year, he looked so tense. You know, that was the biggest fight of his career at that point. I couldn't believe how nervous he looked. It was almost like this was the first time he had walked in this type of a deal. And it was. But he had been in pretty big fights. He'd just never been in this kind of a fight. And I've heard other great fighters talk about how the moment can get you. And I think that's it. And that's why I think it took him a longer time to get going in the first fight. Took like 3 rounds before he started to really get going. So, yeah, that is important. Canelo looked like Canelo. I mean, as you said, Mike, Canelo looked nervous before he fought Mayweather. That was his biggest fight at that time when we were talking.
Marvin Hagler, Roberto Duran. That was Hagler's first profile fight, and he fought tense.
Yeah, he did. He did, right. So it can even get these guys that have been around for a while, you know, like Golovkin got all those fights, all those amateur fights, but the moment with everything on this fight, it can get you, and it makes sense. These are human beings. We've seen it in other sports again, where the moment can make a guy freeze or make him maybe not do what he's planning on doing, or maybe be a little slower, and then he eventually gets there. But Golovkin looked good, calm, and again, that was interesting to me to note that, because that makes me think, obviously, that this time when he's walking the ring, sure, he's going to be a little tense and everything, but it's not going to be like the last time. He's going to be focused and feeling ready to go maybe earlier than the first fight.
Yeah, and when you look, the other thing that struck me when we saw him at the press conference is this. Last year when they fought, Canelo was the bigger fighter. Now Golovkin looks like the bigger fighter. How do we explain that? PEDs?
Well, yeah, it certainly can be. And we're going to see more today at the weigh-in, obviously. I mean, I don't even know. There's some discussion whether they're even going to do the eyeball-to-eyeball thing. I think they should.
Well, I think this. I think the fact that Canelo is showing such anger almost shows his guilt. Because I remember my dad, when I would do something younger, when I was, I like 11, 12 years old, and I'd do something stupid. And he would say, hey, did you do this? I'd get real defensive, and he'd look at me, and he'd say, the way you just reacted shows me that you did it. Because if you didn't do it, you wouldn't act like that. Because you're going over the top to try to make me believe something that we all know is not true. And I think when you look at the way Canelo acts, he knows he's guilty. I mean, let's face it, they did the hair follicle test, but they did it without telling anybody they were going to do it. And they did it a month after he had tested positive. And if you look at their hair follicle test, the rate of having an accurate test drops dramatically after 30 days. So he passed the test, but they took it a month afterwards. I mean, this has all been to cover his ass with Golden Boy. If you look at the VADA testing, he'd never done that until the first fight. So he'd win his whole career without really being tested. And I don't hold that against him as much as others, to tell you the truth, because I think 90% of these guys do something to give themselves an advantage anyways, John.
Well, well, what you said about the hair follicles and all that, I agree with that. I don't believe 90%. I've heard numbers bandied about. I don't believe it's that high. I believe some do. We've discussed that before on other programs. Until a guy gets caught, I tend to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, but you can't catch a guy without legitimate testing that is done monthly.
Right, and it has to be. It appears that VADA, the other one that escapes me right now, is a joke.
USADA. USADA has had one positive test out of 1,500.
I was just going to mention that. It's like, that one's ridiculous. Get rid of that one. VADA does better. When we were talking to Sean Porter on the Ringside Boxing Show, he was talking about how VADA showed up over a span of 2 weeks, like 3 or 4 times, unannounced. And the rule is you have to stop what you're doing and accompany them to a bathroom and then urinate, and then they take it. So they do it more like I think you should, more randomly, so you can't prepare and know that they're coming or whatever. So that's good. But it's another one of those things about boxing. Juan Manuel Marquez is always going to be the one that pops into my brain because, he was so buffed before he fought Pacquiao in the last fight, the 4th fight, knocked out Pacquiao with that right hand. But it was shocking to see an older man for boxing at that point getting so buffed and never being that buffed before and breaking out, which are all signs of PEDs. So I don't think it's 90%, Mike, but I do believe that some of them do it. And boxing has to take it more seriously until something will change. And when you have guys, I have to say this, when you have guys like Mauricio Suleiman, who defends Canelo and all this stuff, and he's the president of the WBC, anybody doesn't know. I mean, to me, that's like the commissioner of football or whatever, which people don't like either, maybe not the best example, but somebody who's supposed to stay impartial, not being impartial at all. And I was watching him at the press conference, and it's obvious who he wants to win. And he gave Golovkin a little bit of a hug. But, it's like, buddy, try to act more professional here. And that's what bugs me about boxing is the professionalism goes out the window sometimes. We all have our favorites. We all have who we want to win. But if you're the WBC president, he always has to come up with another belt for the encounter. It's like, oh, God. But just let it go. Just stay impartial. Don't be so obvious. Don't defend Canelo. Just because Canelo got mad at you, you're trying to get into it and trying to be his buddy again because Canelo didn't want to pay the licensing fee to WBC for the damn belt. I didn't blame him on that one. So that's just boxing, though. We have that, what you mentioned, the PEDs, and we have just these little things that if you love the sport are so aggravating because it trips itself up. It's like 1 step up, 2 steps back, and it can be very frustrating when you love boxing like you do, obviously, Mike, and I do.
Yeah, and the thing that stood out to me is, and I didn't think much of it at the time, but Kermit Cintron was on our show a few times, 2 or 3 years ago, former I think it was WBA welterweight champion, but he had fought Canelo 7 or 8 years ago. And his thing was, when he fought him, and they weighed in. By the time they got ready for the fight and they stepped in the ring, he said that Canelo was like a light heavyweight. And when you look at these guys, and he started off, Canelo did fighting at 135, 140.
Yeah.
So when you look at guys like Oscar De La Hoya, Bernard Hopkins, guys in the past that have blown up like this and gotten bigger, they did not look the way that Canelo does. So I think there is cause for concern with that. But in the end, these guys are going to fight. I don't know if Golovkin's ever taken anything or not, but he's always tested that he didn't. So when I look at this, the other thing about the clenbuterol is it helps you with your stamina, which if you ever hear Canelo's camp, it's what they talk about. He's got to be in better shape, got to be quicker, got to be in better stamina. That's what clenbuterol helps. But my question to you is this. If Canelo wins this fight, is it tainted still because of a test a year ago to boxing fans?
Yes. Yes, it is. And maybe I'm speaking more for myself, but maybe some will just, the Canelo fans, the big fans will argue that it's not, but I think it's always going to be tainted this quickly, and again, that's his fault. And if Golden Boy, again, this is just my opinion, if Golden Boy had done a better job of handling the publicity about it, I don't think, because he angered a lot of people with his attitude. Like you were saying, Mike, his defensiveness. That didn't help. That made it worse. Made him look like a diva. And then you start thinking about the catch weights that he always fought, 155, 155. And it's like, come on, man.
Well, actually, the first fight he fought that was a 160-pound fight outside, our actual middleweight fight was his first fight with Triple G, correct?
Yeah. And then the fact that it would have probably been a better fight if he had fought Triple G 3 years ago. And then the thought that he was waiting for Triple G to get older. And I don't think there's any doubt about that. They can argue and complain. That was pretty obvious, the way Triple G was blowing people away. They didn't want any part of him. And so that's the kind of thing that's troubling. And so, yes, if he wins, I think it's a little tainted. I do. The good thing is see, if I'm his team and he wins, I'm going to say, look, that's in the past. He went through the entire VADA program. He's clean. He won clean, and that's just the way it is. But there's always going to be that little taint on him because of that issue, and I think that's just reality. I just think that's the way it is in sports. When you do something like that, most people will remember it, and in the court of public opinion, it's going to be something that's discussed. And your legacy or your respect might be a little lower because of it. But, with boxing being the way it is, I don't think it'll ever be totally forgotten. But 5 or 6 years, I don't think anybody be talking about it. But he needs a win, and so does Golovkin, again. And that's what makes the fight so intriguing.
Yeah, and I think Golovkin really does for his legacy. And me, John Einreinhofer, Jeremiah Pricer, of course, do Inside Boxing Weekly every week. And the question I asked at the end of the show the other night was this. Are these two guys all-time greats? And me and Steve did a show about the hypocrisy of sports Hall of Fames. And I know now, today, it's just like I was arguing with a boxing fan today, where they said, well, Ricky Hatton was a Hall of Famer, but he wasn't an all-time great, or Miguel Cotto was, whoever it was. And my point with this, and I think Steve agrees with me on this, is the Hall of Fame should only be for all-time greats. Are guys like Triple G and Canelo, are they all-time greats? Is there anything they can do through the rest of their career to become one if they're not one?
Well, no, they're not all-time greats, in my opinion. And if Golovkin wins, yeah, that's huge on his legacy. You're right. And if he keeps winning, if he wins and then he fights Billy Joe Saunders and beats him, which will really be a tough fight against Billy Joe, as we know, then he's moving up closer. But no, neither of these guys to me are all-time greats. When I do mythical matchups in my mind, I put Golovkin against Marvin Hagler. No, he's not going to beat Marvin Hagler. And he's obviously one of maybe the greatest middleweight ever. I think a lot of people would agree with that. I'm not sure if I agree with it, but he's certainly in the top 3. I'd have to think about it a little more, but he's obviously right near the top. And if somebody said this, a record of 62-3, 52 knockouts, I'm like, okay, he's probably the best ever. So, no, but answering the question, Mike, no, I don't think they're all-time greats. I think they're both good. I think Golovkin is better, but I don't see. You're talking about the Hall of Fame being all-time greats, and that the key to me is that word "great." You're supposed to be great when you're in the Hall of Fame, and I don't see them, meaning Canelo or Golovkin, as great fighters. So that's why, yeah.
And the thing that gets me, though, is just how many fans now, and Steve, you can address this too, how many fans are like, well, no, but he was really good, and this guy's in, so he should be in. And to me, Steve, that just gets old. I mean, they water it down, and then it's not worth that much.
Well, the other thing I can add to is the standards just continue to get lower because I think a lot of it has to do with media hype and the feeling that you got to put somebody in the Hall of Fame every year now. You have to have X number of inductees, and you want to make production out of it, make a show, as opposed to, back in the old days when somebody earned the right to be in the Hall of Fame somewhere in any given sport you were chosen to be in. We had a ceremony and we honored that person, but it could go 2 or 3 years before we found somebody who had met the retirement requirements or met the standards that should be in place, the high standards to be in place for anybody to be in a Hall of Fame. But now it's next year's Hall of Fame induction ceremony for the NFL is already scheduled and already planned. So there are 5 or 7 guys going in, whether they're worthy of it or not. And NASCAR's the same way. The NBA, any sport now has their annual Hall of Fame induction ceremony. And many times I think you get players or athletes of a lesser quality just because you have to fill a niche or fill a void. And then all of a sudden you see one great fight, like the fight I just watched on HBO, and you think, oh, that guy, man, I saw a fight, greatest fight of all time, great fight. Sure, I enjoyed it. It was right out of a Rocky movie. One of those guys belongs in the Hall of Fame.
And one of them's in. One of them is in, Steve. Arturo Gatti got into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it should be, a Hall of Fame should be over your body of work for the entire career, from your lowest point to your highest point. Did you always maintain a standard superior to that of 99.9% of all the other people that participated in your sport? If you did, then you qualify. If you're that upper 1/10%, then you're in the Hall of Fame. Otherwise, you're just another great athlete who participated in the sport and excelled in your sport and did exceptionally well.
Yeah,
so,
And if you go ahead.
No. I'm just babbling on. So go ahead and counter on that, which is pretty usual for me.
When you look at it, John, it's gotten to the point where boxing fans want guys in the Hall of Fame that shouldn't even be considered. I mean, you look at our British, compatriots or whatever you call it, and they think guys like Nigel Benn should be in the Hall of Fame, or Chris Eubank, or Lloyd Hunnigan, and they shouldn't. They're nowhere near Hall of Famers. They're nowhere near all-time greats. They're nowhere near great. They were just good.
They're good.
But you see, television does that to you. It makes you famous off of one fight. If the fight is picked up and the fight is seen, and it's seen by enough people, then it becomes legend and lore, and legend and lore now gets into the Hall of Fame rather than accomplishment.
Yeah, but see,
I'd say this is the biggest thing.
With Gotti, there are probably like 10 to 15 fights with him, like what you saw. And with a guy like Gotti, I don't think he was an all-time great. He was just a good fighter.
Nope.
But I think that it brought so many fans to boxing. The question is this, Steve. We'll ask you this, because you have the Hall of Fame. You have a boxing Hall of Fame. Sylvester Stallone was inducted into the Boxing Hall of Fame. Do you think that's right or wrong?
Well, I think it's okay to put him in under not as a boxer.
Well, no, he's not.
But if he goes in if he goes in as a contributor to the sport, I mean, certainly Stallone and Rocky elevated the sport of boxing into a whole genre of people, and definitely made a bigger impact than any other single fight movie or fight thing outside of actually great boxing matches did. I mean, Rocky did more for boxing than anything other than the great fights of all time.
Yeah, other than Muhammad Ali and Joe Louis probably did more for boxing than anything.
And the Max Bears and the Joe Jacksons or whatever the guys from all those areas, and I don't know boxing.
Jack Johnson.
I don't know. No,
Joe Jackson was the baseball
player. Joe Johnson.
Okay, Joe Jackson.
Yeah, I know. I knew I was going to get caught on that one, but I know I don't know those fights, but I know those fights existed. But those guys go in as boxers. They go in on the merit of their accomplishment as an athlete in their sport. So Stallone goes in as a niche in the Hall of Fame for sports writers or contributors to the sport, a contributor to the sport. And sure, Stallone was one of the greatest contributors to the sport of boxing outside of being a great boxer. So is he worthy? Sure, he's worthy. Sure, he is.
So I do think there are exceptions for guys like Gotti, who raised the profile of the sport for damn near a decade. But when you look at guys, and what it always gets me is the Nigel Benn one, John. Am I way off base here? Do you think Nigel Benn's a Hall of Famer?
No, Nigel Benn is not a Hall of Famer. He fought some exciting fights. He could punch, but he's not a Hall of Famer. There aren't memorable fights, at least that I can remember. Sure, he was in some good ones, but his profile was never to the point of Gotti's. Now, we have some friends that would disagree with us, Mike, and that's fine. But and using the criteria that we're using with Gotti, they would use that and say, well, he was in some memorable fights. But Gotti was in so many memorable fights. And in the book, in Intimate Warfare, I wrote a piece about why he deserved to be in the Hall of Fame. And with Stallone, it was obviously his impact. Stallone's impact was so big for boxing. I mean, he's a boxing fan as a young guy, loves boxing, and then he writes this incredible movie. And it changed so many people's perception of boxing, and it was all about what the sport is, passion and determination. And it's a lonely sport, a sport that a lot of times only you, maybe not even your manager or your trainer believe you can do it. And that's why everybody loved Rocky, and it's such a fabulous movie because of that. So Stallone, just for that alone, and obviously the impact on the sport, deserved to be there. And Gotti, again, so many great fights, so many fantastic moments in his career where he looked like he was, again, like Steve said at the beginning, looked like Steve ought to watch the Ruelas fight. Gotti's getting beat up and boom, he did that so many
Rodriguez.
times. There you go.
Wilson Rodriguez was the first fight where I realized that Gotti existed. I mean, he's getting destroyed, bleeding all over the place. We're getting ready to stop the fight, and all of a sudden, one punch ends it.
Yeah, exactly, and that was what made him so special. He was special, and that's another criteria that you need to talk about in that reign, in that realm.
And you have never had the thought to call Dennis Taylor and Ed Mulholland and say, "Hey, let's do a book about Nigel Benn."
No, that's not pumped into my mind, Mike. And now
I'll tell you what you need to write a book about. And I told you this before. Was the Vasquez-Marquez trilogy?
Yeah, well, actually, that has been discussed. So that might be down the road at some point. It's been discussed more than once.
I do get some credit since I brought that up a year ago to you, right? In the book.
Yes, you do get some credit. You will get an acknowledgement. Yes.
Okay.
We acknowledge Mr. Goodpaster of the Ruling Truth.
Steve could tell you I'm like a total attention whore. So.
Yes, I know that
myself
myself
too, because you've known me
I
as
know
long
that,
as
yes.
I've known Steve. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So real quick, what's your prediction on the fight?
This for me, Mike?
Yeah.
Well, I've been flip-flopping around like a politician on this one, and I first thought I'm going with Golovkin. Then I started focusing on the age thing, and I thought, well, Golovkin's a year older. Canelo's in his prime. If he's ever going to beat him, he's going to beat him now. And that was just last week. And then I watched the press conference we were talking about, and I'm thinking, Golovkin looks like the assassin. He's calm. He's cool. He's ready. So now I'm giving the edge to Golovkin. I even think he might even get a decision win just because the judges are also very aware of the controversy of what happened last year. And there might be a little thing in their brain telling them, look, we got to get this right. And as long as they're confident, they will. So right now I'm giving the edge to Golovkin. But this is such a 50-50 fight in so many ways. Golovkin's the favorite. I just read this morning slightly. The odds are getting closer. It'll probably be even by the time they get in the ring. Maybe all the money will go to Canelo. Maybe he'll even be the favorite. But I give the edge to Golovkin. He won the first fight, in my opinion. I watched it 4 times. My opinion never wavered. I still question, even my friend Anthony Cox, who writes for me on Max Boxing, thought that Canelo won the first fight. I just really can't see it. The worst I could go would be a draw, and that would really be stretching. Can't really see that. So I think if Golovkin starts faster, gets to the body, takes some more chances, and Canelo, even if he is taking clairbutanol like last year, he got tired. He came back in the last 3 rounds, though. So I think if he gets to the body, he's going to tire him out, and he might even stop him. But I'm gonna go with Golovkin winning the fight by a decision.
All right, I go Golovkin by TKO in the 11th round. I just think Golovkin's better. I do worry about the age thing, but I'm not going to use that excuse because then John Einreinhofer will start screaming, see. So I'm going to leave that alone. Real quick, we had a football game last night where the greatest football team that ever lived, the Cincinnati Bengals, beat the Baltimore Ravens 34-23. The question is this. Are the Bengals a legitimate Super Bowl contender, Steve Risley?
Well, I think it's too early to tell in the season to be making those kind of predictions.
It doesn't matter because people listen to that kind of stuff, Steve, so now we got to act like it matters.
No, I don't think the Bengals are a quality enough football team to be. Really? I don't think that they have a coach. They do not a coach. They don't have a coach who can navigate them through the playoffs. Okay, simple as that. Belichick has won as many rings for the New England Patriots as any Tom Brady or any other player that's been on that team. You are so far away. You are so far away from a Bill Belichick on the Bengals football team. You have no chance. So no, you will be lucky to get to the second round of the playoffs.
Tony Dungy won it once.
A lot of guys have won at one time. Everybody lucks into something every once in a while.
Okay, so that's what we're saying. Why couldn't Marvin Lewis luck into it? He's no worse than Tony Dungy.
You asked my opinion. I said, no, you're not a Super Bowl contending team with Marvin Lewis as your head coach.
John.
Enough said.
Same question.
No, I can't see that yet. There's 2 games into the season. I mean,
So nobody's a Super Bowl contender right now, not even the Patriots.
Yeah, well, it's the thing about football. It's only 16 games, but you know a hell of a lot more when you're getting around game 9 or 10 what's going on here. But the Bengals always tend to implode. So you just kind of wait for that to happen. Their coach, I don't know what happens why they implode. And then Andy Dalton's playing really well right now. He
always plays really well.
So, yeah. So it's
you
great.
Wish you had him instead of Mitchell Trubisky with the Bears.
No, I don't.
Oh, you don't?
No, I don't.
So you'd rather have Mitchell Trubisky, who will be out of the league 3 years from now, or a career backup?
Well, I think he's going to be pretty good here. So I'm sticking with Mitchell, but. Dalton's good, and when he plays good, he plays well. And so right now at this point, yeah, it's fun to be 2-0. I love being 2-0. I haven't been as Bears fan. We haven't been 2-0, and God, I don't know when the last time we were 2-0. I always think about 2006 when we were 7-0, the Bears, and that was phenomenal, fantastic. But that was mostly because of their defense. Even though, Mike, we had Sexy Rexy at quarterback, we were still 7-0. So those were the days.
So, in 2005, the Bengals went to Chicago and beat the Bears. All right, I agree with Steve. As long as Marvin Lewis is there, I don't think they can win a Super Bowl. I think with the amount of talent, they are a contender because things can happen. By contender to me, I mean right now they look like they're probably the best team in the AFC North because I think the Pittsburgh Steelers have serious issues with an old Ben Roethlisberger. I don't think Mike Tomlin's a very good coach either because, let's face it, if you've got a Hall of Fame quarterback, Antonio Brown, and Le'Veon Bell, and you haven't been to the Super Bowl with them yet, I think there's a problem with that too. So I think the fact that the AFC is not that good, they probably are, but I would say there's probably 8 teams that are Super Bowl contenders in the AFC right now just because of that. But in the end, to go to the Super Bowl, you got to go through Foxborough. So, real quick, and we picked the games yesterday, John, but we know you're a Bears fan. What's your take on the Bears-Seahawks Monday night?
Oh, the Bears are going to win. I don't have any doubt about it. Yeah, I have no doubt about it. I certainly had doubts last Sunday. I thought Green Bay would win, and they did. The way it happened, of course, was heartbreaking for us Bear fans. I don't know if I've gotten over that one yet because I hate Green Bay so much. Sorry to all the Green Bay Packer fans out there, but I hate you guys. So there, let's be honest about it.
I hate them too.
Hey, John. John?
Yeah.
Did they cut the defensive back that dropped the ball that Aaron Rodgers threw right into his hands?
Kyle Fuller.
Did they cut that guy?
They did not cut him.
They should have cut him. That guy gets paid a heck of a lot of money to make basic catches like that. And, that's a tough one to swallow when it means the game and means so much to the Bears to drop a ball that, I mean, Rodgers couldn't have put it in his hands any better. I think he missed the middle of his numbers by maybe 2 inches.
Yeah, that was the game. They would have won the game. That was it.
That was the game.
It was over.
The game's over right there.
What I could do is read everybody the text you sent me at halftime of that game, John, but I won't.
Yeah, no, please don't read that. That was at the height of emotion at that point. I was enjoying every second of it, and you sent me something, so you triggered it, Mike. So it's partially your fault, but yeah, it was because we both don't like the Packers, so we were both reveling there for a little while. But in my case, God, that was a tough one. But no, I think they're going to beat the Seahawks. They'll be home. The defense is good.
Yeah, and the Seahawks' offensive line is bad.
Yeah, and Mac's going to get in there, and the rookie linebacker, he's going to get in. He's going to play more Monday. Yes, he's playing more according to what I read, and I think Trubisky is going to have a good game against Seahawks.
Well, even if he doesn't, you got Jordan Howard, and your defense is better. So I was
going to say, look for Jordan and look for Tariq, and Tariq Cohen's a little gnat running around under everybody. You know, they got some weapons. So
yeah, and the Seahawks defense, the Legion of Doom is dead.
Yeah, Legion of Doom is gone.
Yeah, down to the Legion of Dead. All right.
Yeah.
So I guess we're going to wrap this show up, Steve.
Hey, I got one more topic. I got one more topic everybody wants to just touch on it briefly. We've all been following Serena Williams' situation since the U.S. Open. Now it's come out that the tournament umpires and officials are now talking about boycotting any match that she plays in until she apologizes to the umpire for calling him a cheat and a thief. What's you guys' take on that? If you don't really have any interest, just say, I don't care. I'm done with tennis. I'm done with Serena Williams and move on. But is that an appropriate step for the umpires? And now the umpires are talking about unionizing as well. So is that a byproduct of this whole thing with Serena? And again, letting a prima donna get away with things and coddling her to this point, to where now the USTA has a bigger mess on their hands, where they're going to get the line judges and the referees and the tournament officials to start to unionize and create more havoc for them? Or does anybody care?
I care because I think this is awesome. I think they should do this. I mean, she told an umpire, a few years ago she was going to shove a racket down his throat. She called this one a thief. They only fined her $17,000. She wants to act like she's treated like this because she's just a woman, other than the fact that she's treated like this because she's just a spoiled brat. And when you look at this, I mean, they need to do something about her because her actions, I think, were despicable. I mean, she threw her racket. She called the umpire a thief. What do you expect him to do? Not take a game away from you? I mean, the coaching thing, she sat there and said that she wasn't coached. At the same time, her coach has given an interview saying, yeah, I was coaching her. So I don't know how in the hell this can't be her fault, other than she tried to pull the gender card, and it didn't work. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a big tennis fan. I used to watch tennis back in the time when Jimmy Connors, who tended to have little temper tantrums, as John McEnroe played, and I think they occasionally went after the umpire. Now, I don't remember it that well. I don't know if they ever got that nasty. I remember McEnroe going, "You cannot be serious." I think I remember that. But other things, I think Serena, she's got herself up there, and she's acting like a diva, right? Like a prima donna, and yeah, they have no choice. If you're doing all that kind of stuff, I didn't know she said to some umpire that she's going to shove the racket up. Yeah. Oh my God! See, so
down his throat, not up his but down his throat.
Okay, down his throat. That's whatever. But it's she's out of control, and they got to do something about that, because you let somebody keep getting away with that, they're not going to get any better. It's just going to get worse. And then if they keep bringing up the gender and every other thing, then yeah, there's got to, sports is supposed to have rules where you're supposed to follow them, and that gets lost, and that's gotten worse. And as we've gotten older, as I'm sure we pretty much all agree with, and they got to put a stop to it. I agree. Enough is enough.
So you brought it up, Steve. What's your opinion?
Yeah, I think that they, back in the day when McEnroe, and as I can recall, when McEnroe and Connors were going at the referees as they were, Ely and Nastasi, I don't recall any of them ever taking it personal. They would challenge the call, and they would argue the call, but I don't ever recall any of them making any derogatory comments about personally about the umpire or the referee in the chair. And I think that's where the line gets crossed. In this day and age of PC, politically correct world, it's very unpolitically correct to blatantly in front of millions of viewers call somebody a cheat or a liar or a thief. When it's clearly on tape that you were at fault for all the incidents that happened up to that point, and you're just feeling that you're getting your butt handed to you and you want to vent it out on somewhere else. So by that sense, I think that there definitely needs to be some. The threat of unionizing, that's not good for anybody, I don't think, because I don't know what the bad part about it is either. Maybe it just gives them more clout if the USDA is not going to step up and only fine her $17,000, which is like fining either one of us $1.50 in her financial world. It's nothing. She won't even miss it they'll take it out of her paycheck for the U.S. Open of $1.8 million for finishing second. She won't even miss it. Won't even know it's not there. Yeah, I think I look at this a little bit like in a very broad spectrum degree of kind of like a young Bob Knight. Had people disciplined Bob Knight earlier in his career, maybe he wouldn't have run into some of the issues he ran into later on in his life, because I've used the old adage, you can't let a dog drink out of a toilet for 29 years and then put the lid down. The dog doesn't get it. He didn't understand it. And by letting her get away with it, by a pattern of these events occurring over time and time again, we've just enabled her and empowered her to go ahead and have these tantrums and do it to where it gets to the point now to where it's created a pretty good black eye for the USTA and the WTA and the U.S. Open and for herself for all intent and purposes. So it was not one of their finer moments, not a Hall of Fame moment as I would call it.
No.
So they need to put their foot down hard on this one and stop it. It's not the kind of role model. There's a lot of great young players coming up. The girl that won the tournament's like 20 years old. They see girls, players like Serena getting away with this. Who's to say they're not going to emulate that? Serena is this girl's idol. If Serena can get away with it, then I'm going to go that direction too, because it's going to help me win matches down the road. There's nothing good for it. So I think they need to come down a lot harder on her than they did and really make an example of this. Cannot be tolerated in this sport or any sport.
All right. Well said, Steve. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Remember, next Monday we'll be back with Survive in Advance. Of course, since we're always well prepared, we're not sure what the topic will be yet, but we do. It'll be NFL Week 2, and we'll see how many teams can be as great as the undefeated Cincinnati Bengals. Remember, you can hear all of our shows on iHeartRadio, iTunes, now Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn. Wherever you hear sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So, for John Raspanti, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.